310, minor, they're armed. You're a couple of felonies. They're on the ground, westbound toward Warburger. Westbound toward Warburger.
Umbrella. She's up. Whole nother level of shit you can't even understand.
What is good, my people? We are live back again with another episode of The Forecast. Now, our people really have to realize the perpetual cycle that we are trapped in. We are still in the same position that we were in 400 years ago. And we still aren't responding with any kind of urgency to get up out this situation. Right now, a lot of these other groups are trying to make global moves, and we are still having a hard time organizing ourselves locally. Despite the fact that for hundreds of years, other groups have empowered themselves, a lot of times at our expense, and after all the losses we have taken, we still find ourselves under jurisdiction of their laws. A couple years ago out in Dallas, there was a brother named Kelvion Walker. And even though he was unarmed, he was still shot within seconds by Officer Amy Wilburn. Now let's go back and see what really happened to the brother Kelvion Walker.
Police misconduct is costing Dallas taxpayers millions.
We know that because the I-Team found in the last 5 years, the city has paid more than $10 million just to settle lawsuits filed against Dallas police officers. Investigative reporter Bryan Burgess discovered that the city could also be spending millions more relatively soon. Brian?
Yeah, and Doug, that's because the city of Dallas currently has 38 unresolved liability claims against Dallas police officers, including one that the city has already spent nearly $500,000 to fight.
The police dashcam video from 2013 shows just part of the story. Two Dallas police officers are in pursuit of a reported stolen vehicle when the driver jumps out and runs away. That's Senior Corporal Amy Wilburn. She then rushes up to the moving vehicle, now frees the video. Who you can't see from this vantage point,
I remember everything,
is this man, Kelvion Walker. At the time, he was 19 years old. He's sitting here in the passenger seat of the car, still in a seatbelt, unarmed, and according to an independent witness, Walker had both of his hands up.
That's the first thing I did, and as I'm watching her the whole time, like, she could see me through the glass. It just happened that fast where she just opened the door, and I'm just like in shock for a couple of seconds. Then I'm just like, what you shoot me for? As soon as I look down and I see smoke coming out of my body.
You can hear Walker screaming in pain on the video. An internal affairs investigation determined Wilburn violated the department's deadly force policy. She was fired. The former officer is set to go to trial on a criminal assault charge in January. As for Walker, by the time he arrived at the hospital, according to his medical records, he did not have a pulse. Walker underwent 3 major operations to save his life. Doctors say he will have back and leg pain, along with medical complications the rest of his life, including this.
The bullet is actually still in me.
For now, it's too risky to remove. Walker has sued for damages and for nearly 4 years has been waiting.
How much money has the city given you?
The city hasn't given me anything.
But the I-Team discovered while Walker hasn't received any money from the city has paid a private law firm so far more than $500,000 to defend the fired officer in her civil case. According to city records, this is more money than the city spent to settle all 7 police misconduct claims from 2006 to 2011. Now compare it to the past 5 years, where the city spent $10.8 million to settle 23 cases against police officers. Civil rights lawyer Jeff Henley says this doesn't necessarily mean officers are now behaving worse.
I don't think that there's necessarily been an increase in the violent propensity or the unlawful propensity of certain police officers. I think we just have better means of documenting those abuses now.
In other words, now there's video. In 2014, the city paid a $1.1 million settlement to Ronald Jones after this dashcam video showed an officer beating Jones and wrestling him to the ground. Jones was jailed on a charge of assaulting a police officer. The charge was dropped when this video came to light, contradicting the officer's account. Then last year, the city paid out a record $1.6 million to Bobby Bennett for what was captured on his neighbor's home security camera. Bennett's mother called police to help with her mentally ill son, but seconds after arriving, officers shot Bennett 4 times from 20 feet away. Bennett had a small knife in his hand. As for Walker's case,
they have absolutely taken every chance they can to delay this matter.
The city has already spent a record amount on legal fees for a single officer misconduct case. More legal fees are likely. The civil trial is at least another 6 months away.
Do you think they owe you something, though?
Oh, yeah.
Walker and his attorney are seeking a $10 million settlement.
Now, this increase in the cost to settle these claims is not unique to Dallas. Several large cities across the country have also reported paying more in recent years to settle police misconduct cases. But here in North Texas, that's not the case everywhere. The city of Arlington in the past 5 years paid out $1.9 million to settle police excessive force claims, while records provided by the city of Fort Worth show Fort Worth paid out just $12,000 in law enforcement liability claims. Fort Worth, however, would not tell us how many of its cases have not been settled.
So this brother was allegedly riding in a stolen car, according to them. And when they stopped, the driver got out and ran. And, he stayed in the car with his hands up. And Officer Amy Wilburn, it looked like she was running to the car to try to stop it. And she didn't realize he was sitting in the car. Now, within seconds, she ends up pulling the trigger, shooting this man. And from the video, it looked like she knew she was wrong. Now, of course, one of the things you always hear is if you don't want to get shot by the police, don't do the crime. But we don't know what was happening. We don't know if this brother didn't even know that the car was stolen. And on the report, they said allegedly stolen car, which makes me think it may not even be stolen at all because they wouldn't say alleged. This brother did not try to run from the police when they caught up with him. He said he was sitting there with his hands up and they shot him right away. Now, even though Officer Amy Wilburn got the same story, the same defense as most other cases, she said she feared for her life. She thought he was reaching for something. Just like in most cases when they do internal investigations, they find out that a lot of department policies have been violated. And they ended up firing her. And they even went as far as to actually charge her with criminal assault charges. Now, luckily, this brother, Kelvion Walker, was able to survive, and now he's suing the city. And now places like Dallas is trying to make more of a gesture by charging these officers with some kind of crime. But that attorney was right. Just because they're paying out more money doesn't mean that they're any different. 200 or 300 years ago, they didn't need police uniforms. They could form lynch mobs and come to get you out in the open. If they seen you walking, no matter what you was doing, you was breaking the law some kind of way, unless you was under the rule of a white man. 100 years ago, they started putting sheets over their heads and calling themselves KKK, but they were doing the same thing, hunting you down and shooting you. And then they take their hoods off and put the badges on. And here it is 100 years later. Now they may charge the officer, but this happened a couple years ago. She was charged a couple years ago. She still haven't gone to trial. Just like the cop who shot Jordan Edwards, Officer Roy Oliver, he still haven't gone to trial. And if it does go through all of that and somehow gets to trial, it ends up like the case with the brother Fred Bradford, who was killed by Officer Bryan Burgess. Now let's see what the brother Fred Bradford did for his murder to be justified.
Today we learned why a Dallas police detective changed his mind and decided to charge an officer with criminal charges who hit and killed a bicyclist during a police chase. Fox 4's Lori Brown live at the courthouse with what happened in court today. Lori.
Steve, a police detective testified that he initially did not think that Officer Bryan Burgess was responsible for the death of Fred Bradford, but he says a recording he heard later changed all of that. Former Dallas police officer Bryan Burgess showed no expression as the jury listened to his recorded statements. He and his partner Michael Puckett were talking to their supervisor about the crash that killed 51-year-old Fred Bradford. It happened in April 2013. Bradford was pedaling away from Burgess, who was pursuing him with his lights and siren on. Puckett was chasing him on foot. Earlier, Puckett testified he recorded the conversation on his phone because he felt the sergeant had been unfair in the past. Detective Randy Laboda says initially Burgess told him that Bradford hit the squad car, but he says the recording taken right after the crash revealed a different story.
In the tape, you clearly hear that during the pursuit, Mr. Bradford hit a grassy area. He started to slow down. His foot came off the pedal of the bicycle. That Officer Burgess came around the corner, hit the wet grass as well. That he tried to stop, but that he couldn't, and it was the squad car that hit Mr. Bradford.
The detective summed up his decision to file homicide charges this way.
He was additionally negligent, that because of the way he operated the motor vehicle, he didn't call for an ambulance right away. He misled the ambulance people as to the reason that they were there, that he moved evidence.
Late this afternoon, a witness for the defense who gives pursuit training to DPD officers testified that Burgess did not do anything wrong during the pursuit. Earlier, prosecutors argued that he traveled at an unsafe distance when making a blind curve.
So they say this brother was looking quote-unquote suspicious. They thought he was reaching in the cars or something. So they decided to chase his brother, and Officer Bryan Burgess ends up hitting him with his car, running him over, and killing him. Now, even though he had already hit him with his car, his partner came up and said he was still arresting him, as they usually do, probably with a knee in his neck or in his back, even though he was already dead. Believe me, they do that for pleasure. They are experts in Black Death. They've been doing it for hundreds of years. They know what kills us and what doesn't. So when they say they still handcuffing you after you're dead on the ground for their own safety, I don't believe that. But even with the laundry list of the things that Officer Bryan Burgess did wrong, like waiting to call the paramedics, misleading them as to why they were coming out there, lying on his police report, a list of things that he did wrong, even though they decided to press charges on him, a jury of his peers in good conscience could not convict him of murdering this man.
A Dallas County jury acquitted a Dallas police officer charged with criminally negligent homicide after hitting a man riding a bicycle. Officer Bryan Burgess hugged his attorney shortly after that verdict was read. Fox 4's Lori Brown has been in the courtroom for the entire trial. She joins us now with more. Lori.
Heather, a juror told me that in the end, they felt Officer Bryan Burgess was not negligent when he hit and killed a man who was pedaling away from him.
We, the jury, find the defendant not guilty. So you're free to go.
And with that, a 4-year wait was finally over for Dallas police officer Bryan Burgess. His attorney, Robert Rogers, told us his client was too emotional to talk to us.
These cases shake you to the core because you're representing good people that are doing their job.
Dallas County District Attorney Faith Johnson says while she does not argue with the jury's verdict, she says she stands by her prosecutor's case.
We love our police officers. We think we have great police officers here in Dallas, Richardson, and what have you. We think they're great. But if we think one has gotten out of line and we think that there is some type of negligence. If there's some kind of criminal negligence, we plan to pursue it.
The crash 4 years ago today cost Burgess his job and nearly cost him his freedom. He faced as many as 10 years in prison if convicted. On April 21st, 2013, Burgess and his partner saw 51-year-old Fred Bradford reach into a parked car. Burgess turned on his lights and sirens, but Bradford pedaled away on a bicycle. The state argued Burgess followed at an unsafe distance, which is why he ultimately hit and killed Bradford. And prosecutors contend he then moved his squad car and the bicycle to cover up evidence.
If he'd have lived, he would have been paralyzed.
We spoke with Fred Bradford's mother Tuesday, but when the verdict came down, she was in the hospital with pneumonia. A civil rights activist who observed the trial said he was disappointed by the verdict.
This is a blue city here. This was about protecting blue.
One jury told us in the end the jury did not feel the state made its case.
He was not speeding. That they did prove that it was between 11 and 15 miles an hour that he was going. It was wet. The grass was wet, and we just felt like the prosecution just did not have enough to convict this man.
Burgess's attorney says he will now begin the process to try to get his job with the Dallas Police Department back.
Now, of course, this is the same result that we have had over and over and over, but somehow we still act surprised when we see it. Now, not only is this cop trying to get back pay, which he probably will, he's trying to get back on the force, which most likely he probably will. And the people that are in position to get short-term justice for these individual cases, while we don't have their back, they have to apologize for trying to get justice. If they want to keep their position, they have to give a disclaimer for trying to go after one of these cops for justice. And even when it does go to trial, whether it be a bench trial with just the judge or a jury trial, they make all kinds of excuses why killing these people is okay. Like, he wasn't going too fast. The grass was wet. He couldn't help it. They make all kinds of excuses why a police officer runs over a person in a car and kills them, and that's okay. Yet, none of this is enough reason for us to say, okay, we'll put aside our tribalism so we can work together, so we can protect ourselves, so we can stop this from happening. And it's not just us. It's not just here. Right now, they having slave auctions over in Libya. It's mass murder over there. You have Haiti being decimated by natural disasters and people sucking the life out of the island. And they're sending all of these Haitians back with no kind of help, even though they drained their resources. We know what's been going on in America for hundreds of years, all to maintain control of the power, to maintain control of the natural resources. But it's still easier for us to take our anger out on each other. It's way easier to fight one another than to actually face our enemy. That's no different than when they used to fight slaves like dog fighting, when they used to make the slaves fight each other to death. And those two black men, those two black brothers would fight each other to the death by any means necessary for the benefit of a white man who don't give a fuck if they live or die, beyond whatever bet he might have put on them. They still have that same mentality, but the problem is we still have that same mentality. Until we can change that mentality, then we will continue to be subject to their laws. Nobody else can give us power. We can only empower ourselves.
Former Dallas police officer says that she feared for her life, and that's why she fired on an unarmed suspect, injuring him. Amy Wilburn is one of 2 DPD officers in 40 years to be indicted in an officer-involved shooting. And tonight we hear directly from that former officer. News 8's Tanya Iser has exclusively obtained the depositions in this case and combed over more than 10 hours of footage. She has the story new tonight.
was thinking, oh my gosh, I thought I was going to die.
This is former Senior Corporal Amy Wilburn describing the moments after she shot Kelvion Walker. Wilburn was fired over the 2013 police shooting, accused of shooting an unarmed Walker while he had his hands up. The grand jury indicted her on charges of aggravated assault in the wake of the on-duty police shooting. Now News 8 has obtained the deposition Wilburn gave last month in a federal civil rights lawsuit. It's the first time we've heard the former officer explain in her own words her actions that day.
I thought my kids were not going to have a mom or a dad, and I had to shoot somebody, which I had never thought I would have to shoot somebody.
It was December 9th, 2013. Wilburn and other officers were chasing carjacking suspects.
We got behind them. They sped up. The driver jumped out. My first thought is, don't let it hit that building.
Wilburn jumps out, running up to the car. She thinks it's empty. Surprised to see Walker, she pulls her gun. She says she told him to show his hands.
He moved too quick with his right arm, and his hand went down.
She says she shot him because she thought he was reaching for a gun.
I was like, what'd she shoot me for? I know she seen like I really didn't have anything and I had my hands up.
An independent witness told police Walker had his hands up when Wilburn shot him. Wilburn says he must be mistaken.
I would not shoot somebody with their hands in the air if they were surrendering.
The video shows Wilburn repeatedly checking on Walker, sometimes putting her hands on her head.
My thinking has been all along that she shot him, then she realized afterward, oh no, what have I done?
Jeff Henley is an attorney representing Walker.
She made the decision to do what she did, and it was wrong. She could have very well been right, and it could have saved her life. But she just happened to be wrong, and it's just a unfortunate tragedy all the way around, really.
Both the criminal and the federal civil rights lawsuits in this case are still pending. Walker's attorney is seeking a multi-million-dollar judgment, saying that Walker still suffers permanent physical injuries as a result of the shooting.
The trial began today for a Dallas police officer accused of hitting and killing a man on a bicycle and then tampering with the crime scene. His former partner, who was with him that night, took the stand. Fox 4's Lori Brown is live at the courthouse with today's developments. Lori.
Heather, today prosecutors worked to show that it was Officer Bryan Burgess's decisions from start to finish that are to blame for the death of a man riding a bicycle. But the officer's attorneys argued that it was the victim, Fred Bradford's decision to flee, that was to blame.
Former Dallas police officer Bryan Burgess, wearing a suit and tie with a bright green shirt, appeared calm as his trial began. He faces punishment from probation to 20 years in prison if convicted. For the first time, we heard from his former partner, Michael Puckett.
It's hard to be here today.
Puckett took the jury back to April 21st, 2013, the night he and Burgess pursued 51-year-old Fred Bradford, who was riding a bicycle, after they saw him reach into a parked car.
My thought process was it's either some kind of drug deal or burglary of a motor vehicle.
Then he explained why they went after Bradford instead of the person in the car based on DPD's chase policy.
Because we can't chase vehicles.
You can't chase a vehicle in your vehicle?
No, we cannot, unless it's a violent felony that occurs in our presence.
While Burgess chased Bradford in a squad car, Puckett was chasing him on foot. Burgess followed Bradford off MLK Boulevard into a grassy area. His attorney said he was going 11 miles an hour when he hit Bradford. Puckett got to the scene after the crash.
What did you see?
Officer Burgess on top of Mr. Bradford, attempting to cuff him still.
Was Mr. Bradford saying anything?
He was cursing at the time.
Was Mr. Burgess saying anything?
Stop resisting.
Prosecutors argued in opening statements that Burgess waited 8 minutes to call for an ambulance and altered the crime scene before they arrived.
Who moved the bike?
Officer Burgess.
Do you know why he did that?
No, sir.
Some of the most interesting insights from Officer Puckett came when the jury was not in the room. He said that a previous supervisor thought that he and Burgess should not work together because Burgess did not like to follow orders. He also said that Burgess was taking testosterone, which a sergeant thought made him more aggressive. But that information was not admissible in the trial. Heather?
All right, so Lori, do we know why there was no dash cam in the case?
Well, dash cam sure would clear up a lot of information, and an investigator testified today that the dash cam video was not working because the hard drive was full, and he said that Officer Burgess had told his supervisors that the hard drive was full and that it wasn't working earlier that day.
And now to an exclusive interview with a former Dallas police officer found not guilty of negligent homicide. Bryan Burgess sat down with our Rebecca Lopez. He talked about why he believes racial tension played a big role in his case.
Burgess, jury ever found you not guilty?
Those are the words Bryan Burgess waited 4 years to hear.
Standing in that courtroom, it was relief.
Burgess sat down for an exclusive interview with News 8.
I've been called a liar. I've been called, racist. I've been called everything, thrown under the bus by the department, used as a political football.
He says he was never guilty of a crime. He was accused of criminal negligent homicide for the death of 51-year-old Fred Bradford. Bradford was fleeing on his bike from Burgess and his partner, who had ordered him to stop after they thought they saw him doing a drug deal and for not wearing a helmet and no lights on his bike.
If he would have just stopped in that alley, it probably would have been a 2-minute conversation.
But Bradford took off. Evidence showed the officer was only going 11 miles per hour when Bradford's bike veered into the squad car. Prosecutors say the officer was going too fast and was too close to stop.
I hit the brakes, did everything I could to avoid it, but there's nothing I could have done.
The jury agreed and found him not guilty. Burgess says he feels he was prosecuted because of tensions between the community and officers. The district attorney at the time, Craig Watkins, was up for re-election and tried charging Burgess with manslaughter before settling on a lesser charge. He says he felt betrayed and demoralized by the department he loved.
Didn't come here for the pay, didn't come here for the pension, great, but you came because Dallas was a great department. When Chief Kunkel was here, morale was high, and then through the years with Chief Brown, you just see it decline.
Burgess says he plans on fighting for his job back because he says he still wants to do the job he says he was born to do.
Me for the pack of wood. Pack of wood will kill me. Be like you kill me. You be putting that rope around my neck yourself. What you think you is, a hound dog? Pack of wood say go fetch, you fetch. You see me hang, you gonna know. You gonna know you kill a black brother. Cicero! Mayhaps I could have got away on beat for you catching me. You remember that. You remember that all day. You killed me. You remember that. You killed me. Niggas like you just proved what the Peckerwood